Hey everyone, this is Fabio and welcome back. And today it's time to do a new game discussion video. And we're going to talk about the game that I finished yesterday, which is the first Golden Sun on the Game Boy Advance. A game and a series that I've always wanted to play. But interesting enough, it's not I never had a chance, but it always kind of slapped across my fingers. I mean, I owned this game for years now, a long time. I'd say at least 5 years or something like that. But never really played completely. Once I bought it, as I said, many years ago, I played it twice. And both time played around like 5 hours or so, but then got distracted with some other games because at the time I still had the bad habit of playing multiple games at the same time. So with the result that it's drop one game in favor of another and then of another and basically finish 0 games. Now that I decide to play one game at a time, it's true that I don't play too many games, but at least I finish the games I really want to finish. So I remember that quite recently I've heard about this. I always know about Golden Sun. It's a very high regarded series among RPG fans. And recently, by listening to a podcast or reading something about it, I said, oh, Golden Sun. I have the first game. I remember I liked it, but I never really played it. So I decided, okay, let's go back to the first game. Let's see how it goes. And if I like it, it would be interesting to play the whole series, one after the other. This is what I'm going to do, basically. I played the game, loved it so much that even before I finished it, like while I was playing, I bought both Lost Age and Dark Dawn. And Lost Age was already in my DS and already started to play for an hour or so yesterday night. After I tried in vain to put that insane password to import my equipment, gins, and money, basically, from the first game to the second. And it's funny that we heard a lot of times the angry video game nerd complaining about NES passwords. Well, he needs to see the Golden Sun password. Since it's like 6 pages of letters, numbers, symbols. It's absolutely crazy. I never saw a password like that. And it's interesting when I started Lost Age, I said, do you want to import your files? I was like, oh, you can do that? Interesting. And, well, it will make sense since it's a continuation of the same story, but I didn't know that. Honestly, it's interesting that I thought the Lost Age would be like a prequel or something like that, but I was completely wrong, I know. So I didn't know how, so I read how to import your files, and I read about the password. So I did it, and when I saw that insane 6 pages, as I said, of password, I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna start the game from scratch, I don't care. So... yes, I started Lost Age from the scratch instead of importing all my stuff, but I don't mind. But Golden Sun, really enjoyed it, It's such a charming and old school game that I'm really surprised that it took me so long to play it, but now I'm finally going back to it and enjoy it at its fullest, and I cannot recommend it enough. But let's go with order. And the story of Golden Sun, it's interesting, but I think that I will have a better grasp of it after I played Lost Age, since it's a long story. I just played part 1. Basically, it takes place in this world where alchemy used to be a very important part of it. So it's one of those games that involves alchemy, but in an interesting way. It's not instrumental in the gameplay, indirectly. I will explain later, but... And basically, alchemy was the reason why civilization was able to flourish in the past. But, of course, some people started to misuse it in order to be more powerful, richer. We all know about the legend about alchemy and turning every material into gold, for example. So because of this misuse of alchemy, people sealed it. And the story begins with certain individuals start trying to break one of the seals to free alchemy to the world again. And basically this attempt caused a massive storm that affects the village where the main protagonists, Isaac and Garrett, live. Causing a tragedy that will lead to the beginning of the story itself. And after this, Isaac and Garrett leave the village of Vale, their homes, in order to stop these two people. Their names are quite out there. One is kind of like Satoros or something like that, and the female, I don't even remember her name. They're quite weird names, honestly. But basically at the beginning they tricked you to do something, and after that you have to follow them in order to stop them, to break all the seals, because every time a seal is broken it causes great cataclysm to the world. And basically that's the plot of Golden Sun 1. It's, as I said, I think I still need to learn a lot, mainly about alchemy, I think, because it's... I think the story of Lost Age will complete this full knowledge of this story and this world. I'm very curious about that. And from the story we can move to the characters, because I think the two things are connected, and the characters might be the weakest part of the game, in my opinion. I mean, to me, as the kind of RPG player that I am, because I love like well-developed characters with a lot of interaction between each others, and that's not really the strongest point of Golden Sun, even though I like these characters, of course. But you have to understand, before Golden Sun I play like Legend of Heroes, Trace in the Sky Second Chapter, Trails of Cold Steel, and these games have really well-developed characters, and interaction between these characters and dialogues and everything are fundamental and massive in these games. Golden Sun, it's not really like that. And one of the reasons why I think it's not that I didn't like this character at all, actually. I liked them, but not as much as I wanted, maybe. It's because Isaac, the main protagonist, is a silent protagonist, and I don't like silent protagonists very much. I think I already said it in previous videos, and mainly because I completely agree with, I think it was Aerodynamish or Greg, Wanderer from the Past, Swagman, who said that in order to have a silent protagonist and counterbalance his or her silence, it's necessary to have great co-protagonists. And with all due respect to Garrett, Ivan, and Mia, they're not as well developed, as deep as they needed to be in order to counterbalance Isaac's silence. Because the only thing you can basically do with Isaac is answering yes or no to certain questions, like, do you think we should go there, Isaac? Yes or no? And it's interesting because also has the silence of Isaac, it's weird. Wow, it's very noisy now. And even when other characters ask for your name, it doesn't look like Isaac, it's moving his head, and then the other character will say, oh, okay, your name is Isaac. Like, for example, it's something that happened in Breath of Fire games. In here, it's Garrett saying, I'm Garrett, is Isaac. I mean, but that's just a very personal thing with silent protagonists. It's something that I never really liked. It's the usual story. I mean, I understand it's a way to make you connect better with the protagonist, like, you are Isaac. But it's something that it doesn't really work for me, because I want to play this game for their adventures. I want to play this game in order to look and see and experience Isaac's story, not from my point of view, if it makes sense. But that's one thing. But for the rest, I mean, these characters were nice, and I really like also the other characters, which are now the main cast of Lost Age, and that's Felix, Jenna, Sheba, and Alex. And also the main antagonists. I would like to know better the reasons for their actions. I mean, that's quite fundamental to understand a villain, it's through their actions. I mean, why they're doing what they're doing. It's not very clear. I mean, yes, we want to lead the lighthouses. Why? Maybe because it's wrong to have seal alchemy. I mean, it's just. I think there's still important questions that need to be answered with the story of Lost Age. I hope. Because overall, as villains, they're quite interesting. They're not as threatening most of the times. I mean, they're not just killing everybody, destroy the world, trying to conquer the world. Not at all. It's interesting. They at the beginning of the game, they captured a couple of hostages, but they treat them well in a way. I mean, they're not very evil. Their only fault is that they want to do this, and people at the beginning of the game said to Isaac, "You have to avoid that." Okay. But I would like to know their point of view. But overall, as I said, it's not that I didn't like this character and I didn't like the story. I liked both of them. I just feel that there's more to it, and I'll get my answers by playing Lost Age. But at the same time, I said that to me, the story and the characters aren't the strongest points of Golden Sun, because the strongest point and the main reason to play this game is actually the gameplay. And I'm glad to have this kind of different RPG experience after really heavy hitters on stories like the Legend of Heroes games, to have a game which is actually an RPG which is actually focused more on the gameplay, both in terms of combat but also in terms of what you can do outside of combat. So let me explain. The combat, it's classic turn-based, my all-time favorite. As you know, I love turn-based RPGs. They'll always be my favorite. But it's so cool thinking that this is a Game Boy Advance game, and this combat system is amazing. Like with most of the technical aspects of the game, so like the graphics, the music, and then the combat system, I thought this game was outstanding. I mean, this is a Game Boy Advance game. It has nothing less than a really good PlayStation 1 game, for example, or even more, I don't know. I mean, this is a really well-made, very well-made game. The combat system, it has a very interesting view, because it's not the typical like side to side, like your party, the enemy. It's more like diagonal with an interesting perspective. Like you are behind your team, but you're looking this way. Like you're still looking at the enemy, but it's not like it's hard to describe in a way. I mean, it has this dynamic camera in a way that makes it very interesting for being a classic, actually, turn-based system. And as I said, it also looks so good, and it works extremely well. But the coolest thing in combat to me are the summons, which are a big part of the game, of course, but I think Golden Sun might have my favorite summon system in an RPG yet. Probably, I say. Because summons, I usually connect them with Final Fantasy mainly, but in that you have you summon a being that makes a very powerful attack, and then it disappears, and you can use it the next turn, and so on. In Golden Sun, it's very important also to look and find these creatures called Jinn, and you can find excuse me 7 per character. And like for the main 4 elements of alchemy, so there is earth, fire, water, and air. That's fine. So basically, all Jinns have, you can summon a Jinn, and they have specific abilities. Like there might be one that allows you to make a powerful attack, or another one that increases your defense, and another one that increases your attack, or that, I don't know, seal the enemy synergy, or stuff like that. You can heal your HP or whatever you want. There are so many. But the interesting thing is that they don't treat the Djinns as this sort of ace in your sleeve. Like you have summoned the Djinn, you're going to win. If you summon the Djinns, you have to be very careful, because the more Djinns you summon, the more they affect your character's attributes, meaning that they decrease like your strength, your HP, your defense. So you have to strategize if you want to use Djinns. You be careful to use all 4 character Djinns at the same time, because it's going to weaken the whole party, basically. You have interesting abilities at the same time, but you're weaker. But the more Djinns you summon, the more powerful summon you can actually do. Like, because it's not that just one Djinn. You can start with one Djinn, but then with 2, they basically fuse to a more powerful creature, and another one with 3 and 4. I mean, by the end, when you have all the Djinns, you can summon uber powerful attacks, which are awesome. I mean, just the animations of the summons are mind-blowing. As I said, this is a Game Boy Advance game. So combat is fantastic, and so it's the summon system. I really enjoyed it. And it's another big part of the game, like the exploration, puzzle solving, looking for the Djinns and all this stuff, which is connected, as I said, with the gameplay. Which it's the best feature to me of Golden Sun. Because while not in combat, it's just, again, typical RPG. You explore the world in order to progress with the story, but in the meanwhile you can look for the Djinns, for secrets, for in terms of mainly equipment and stuff like that. But there is a lot of thinking involving in Golden Sun, because you can use your abilities called Synergy mainly to progress into the story, because if you don't use a certain abilities, you cannot, for example, proceed with the story. But in a very interesting way, you can use your abilities, for example, to move a rock, to lift a rock, to freeze a pool of water in order to create an ice pillar, or to read people's minds, or to cloak yourself into shadows, and all this really cool stuff, which involves a lot of thinking, and it's so much interesting and a really breath of fresh air for the games I've been playing. Not that I complain with the games I've been playing, but it's such a different style of gameplay that I greatly enjoyed it. Like, I was really, really liking it. Like, when you find or you discover a new ability, a Psynergic ability, it's a really nice feeling to know, yes, now I can proceed to that point because I needed to, I don't know, like lift the rock because I couldn't move it. So discovering these new abilities is a really big part of the game, since they're very useful, mainly to proceed with the story, but also, like, for example, to find all the Djinns. So gameplay is by far the best part of the game, and I'm sure that it will be the same in Lost Age. And that's, I think, it's the main reason to play Golden Sun, because it has such an interesting level of gameplay that it's quite different from your standard RPG that usually are not very focused, I think, on puzzle solving on this kind of way. I mean, even problem solving at some time. It's very interesting. As I said, from a technical point of view, this is a very, very well-made game by Camelot, which, by the way, I didn't know. I admit, I didn't know that they were the same guys who did the Shining Force game. That was surprising to know. It's fantastic. I already talked about like how amazing is the combat system, but like the graphics are very, very good looking. Again, I cannot stress this enough. This is a Game Boy Advance game. It's not on discs or, I don't know, like a GameCube or a PS2, since it's the same game generation. And I cannot imagine how awesome this game would look on the Super Game Boy Player, how's it called, in order to play it on the GameCube. Like probably most Game Boy Advance games, that's the real way you should play it, because if the game is so good looking on my DS screen, I cannot imagine on a big TV, but I don't have a GameCube, so not this time. But yeah, I mean, it's a very colorful and gorgeous to look game. But one thing that also surprised me is how good the music was. I mean, the soundtrack of Golden Sun is fantastic. Starting from the title screen theme to my personal favorite, which is the theme of the Venus Lighthouse towards the end of the game. The music is really good. Also, like the world map, the dungeon music was very nice and kind of ominous in a way because you're exploring a dungeon, so you need a certain type of music. Really, really well made soundtrack. I don't know if it's possible to buy it. I would love to. I tried to look for it on Amazon and eBay, but I don't think they made like a CD or something, which is a shame. They should, but something that we might talk about a bit towards the end. So, excellent soundtrack. Like, if you like game music, Golden Sun, it's really, really nice, and I cannot wait to hear the whole soundtrack of Golden Age, of Lost Age, and Dark Dawn, since on the DS it has more power behind it. So, cannot wait to play that, because of course I also bought Dark Dawn, so I have the whole series. So overall, I cannot recommend you the Golden Sun series, the first game in particular, but as I said, I already started the first Golden Sun, and I cannot talk now. I already started Lost Age yesterday for about 1 hour, and I really like it so far, but just started it, of course. So. But it's interesting that other than all this more like technical talking about the story, the characters, the music, and all of this, which is important, of course, but I wanted also to highlight my feelings while I was playing the game, because that's also important, because I had all this time this feeling that I was living this great adventure. I love this kind of games. It reminded me in a way of Grandia, kinda. It's not exactly the same thing, but the idea of these young kids leaving their homes to explore the big world, it's something that I really like. And one thing, I'm not sure, I don't think Golden Sun has the same kind of innocence of Grandia, especially look at the beginning of the game. It's in Golden Sun, it's quite dark actually, compared to Grandia 1. But I had this feeling, mainly because when you have such young protagonists and they have start to live these big adventures, it's something that it always touches a spot with me. It's a soft spot since I grew up when I was very, very young. I always dreamed of having these big adventures, like when I play in the garden or in the woods behind it, I always dream of being an adventurer, exploring this mysterious world and something like that. It might sound silly now, but this also might be one of the reasons why I got into video games, because they offer me a possibility to have these adventures indirectly. But basically, when I played in the garden, this is almost what I did, like living these great adventures. And I have to say, because of this, I really love the ending of the game. Of course, I'm not going to tell what happened, but when that scene happened and the game's over, I was like, that's a great that's a great ending. Even though, of course, it's absolutely open because there's still Lost Age, but it has this big feeling that this was just the beginning. The adventure will continue, because it has such a big sense of adventure to me that it was really nice and heartwarming in a way. It might sound silly, but after all the epic and drama of Legend of Heroes, something like this, I felt I really needed something like this. And also, it has this interesting feeling that, especially when I started Lost Age, it's the fact that, to me, Golden Sun also had a very, and it might be just me, it's just thinking out loud here. Golden Sun has this feeling of someone telling you a bedtime story, basically. And it's very, I think, strong in the beginning of Lost Age, and I'm not going to talk about that too much, but when you say, like, our story began a long time ago, and to me, had almost the feeling like, let me tell you the story of Isaac, Felix, and their friends, and how they travel around the world, looking for, I suppose, sealing or free alchemy and restore it or city forever to protect the world or something like that. But it has this feeling of a bedtime story, which is very charming in a way to me. And I don't think it's coincidence in the fact that both games technically, as called like Golden Sun Book 1 and Book 2 The Lost Age, so they have this story telling feeling behind them, which is very interesting and always nice. As I said, it's maybe this sense of, not necessarily innocence, but wonder, I say, of adventure, of something really old school that maybe in today's gaming, with all we have to have this really serious and dark and gritty story, it's kind of lost. And sometimes these fantasy RPGs, it's might be simple as that. It's just a story. It's just like, as I said, it's just a bedtime story. Who knows? Maybe it's just my foolish brain thinking that, but it really felt a lot like that to me. And it's also part of the charm of the game. But as I said, this is just me. Of course, let me know what you think if you have played, like most of you, I suppose, the Golden Sun games. I'll be very curious to know some of your thoughts about it. If you haven't played, I cannot recommend this game enough. You can probably find for very, very cheap both the Game Boy cards, and I believe it's on the Virtual Console as well. So you shouldn't have any problem finding them. And so this is probably something I should keep for my Dark Dawn discussion, but I just want to mention, I really hope that Nintendo will make a new Golden Sun game sometime, or at least like a HD remake of the originals. But we'll talk about this later, since I still have 2 games to play. So maybe I cannot say this. I would like to have more Golden Sun games. I have 2, so I think this is it. I cannot think of anything else to add to Golden Sun. But seriously, cannot recommend this charming and really, really gorgeous RPG enough. It's absolutely a must. If you like the genre, don't do like I did. Keep playing it because it's a lot of fun, and it's a really well-made RPG for the Game Boy Advance, which proved to be an amazing RPG machine again. You can say that already at the time that handheld consoles were started to get very big into RPGs, probably from the Game Boy Advance, because, man, that console has a lot of great RPGs. And this is probably one of the best, I'll say. We'll see with Lost Age if we'll beat the first one, but now I can see why the first Golden Sun is so much high regard by RPG fans. Rightly so. It's a fantastic, very charming RPG. I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like always, I'll see you next time. Take care.